Welcome to the Cross Discussion. Welcome back to episode 2. Thanks for joining us today. Today I'm your host Cody. We've got my sister Mia as another host, and we've got Lexi. You've seen Lexi before in the last episode. We've got our special guest Kev. Welcome here, Kev. I'm excited to hear a bit about you and your story and that sort of thing. So,
great to be here. Great to be here.
Yeah. So this week we're going to be looking at the question, what do I do with my life? So obviously we've got you, Kev, explaining that sort of thing, kind of going in depth. We're going to be asking you a couple of questions about that sort of thing, and we'll have you elaborating on those. So, all right. So we always like to start with a little activity, like kind of an icebreaker with the guest and that sort of thing. So we always like to play a bit of a would you rather game.
All right.
A couple of questions for would you rather. We'll just get your answers for those ones. Actually, I think we'll all answer them, all as a group. So Mia, did you want to go through and ask these questions?
So, first one is, would you rather team up with Wonder Woman or Captain Marvel?
Wonder Woman.
Not a DC fan.
No.
Yeah, I can't say I am either.
Episode done.
There you go.
Second is, would you rather be forced to sing along or dance to every song you hear?
Ooh. Oh, that's...
There's a good question for Kev, I think.
Yeah.
Oh. Probably dance.
Really?
Yeah.
There you go.
You can hide that more.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I would have gone, I think I would have picked you for doing either, I guess.
Yeah.
It was a 50-50.
Both.
Have a go. Mix it up.
Yeah. You probably do both. You could. Yeah.
Would you rather be in jail for 5 years or be in a coma for a decade?
I'd rather be in jail for 5 years.
Which one have you done?
Been in jail. No. Because at least if I'm in jail, I can still be effective to some degree. So,
Yeah, there you go.
Would you rather lose your sight or your memories?
Oh, sight. Yeah, memories are too precious
Yeah.
to lose.
Yeah, true.
Would you rather swim in a pool full of maple syrup or Nutella?
That's still feeling a bit sticky thinking about that. Hey,
Yeah,
I think
maple
both of these are
syrup.
bad.
probably the
Maple
maple syrup.
All right, well, that one was the last one.
That was the last question.
Yeah.
Not a pretty easy answer.
Yeah.
There you go. They were pretty good ones, I think.
Quick and
Those
easy.
ones, yeah. Yeah, all right. So I think we'll just get started with, I guess, the thick of the actual podcast episode today. Obviously, we're going to ask you a couple of questions. You're going to answer them. We're going to kind of have a bit of a discussion about, obviously, you're sharing your testimony and then just things that kind of pop up. So we believe you had a pretty coloured past. Would you be able to share your story, your testimony, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, probably to understand the colourful side of my past, I probably need to go back just a little bit, just to give you a bit of context. So as I grew up, I was a very, very unwell child most of my life. Up till about the age of 9, I was in and out of hospitals and all sorts of things. And we relocated from England to Australia because of the weather thing. And then at 9 years of age, my mother was told by the doctors there's nothing more that we can do for him, just basically go home, wait for him to die. So that wasn't great news. And then it took a few years after that, because the medical had given up on us, so Mum had to go and explore all sorts of things. So that led to me to be quite an anxious and insecure kind of a young fella. And then what happened was I got a little bit of health better, so I started to pick up, and I was playing soccer, and I wanted to be a professional soccer player, and then I have motorcycle racing. I wanted to do that. And up to about the age of 15. And then 15, my dad said to me, he said, "You're not learning anything at school, so I think I should rip you out and you should come and do a trade with me," which was to go and be a bricklayer. So it wasn't really my first choice. I wanted to do either music or motorcycle racing or football or something like that. So anyway, I got pulled into that. Then what happens, in my apprenticeship early on, I have an accident and I end up paralysed from the waist down. I had to learn to walk all over again. So this stage, I've lost all my dreams now because the doctor has said, no soccer, no motorcycle racing, no anything. So that's the backstory to me being a pretty angry, pretty frustrated, disappointed young guy who had given up on school, and school had pretty much given up on him as well. So I did what all people do. In that case, you join a band. And so I joined a band, picked up a bass guitar. I went out there and started playing on all of the clubs and the pubs and seedy kind of places. And doing that because of the state that I was in at the start, it just made things worse. Things just went from bad to worse. I just ended up in relationships that weren't helpful. And the more I got into the relationships, the more they messed me up, the more they hurt me. Then they got into substance abuse, and it ended up destroying the whole band. And so basically, I went down the track of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's what it was for me. Yeah. I had no idea the damage it was doing. And it left me pretty well empty and pretty well unclear about everything to do with life. So that gives you a bit of the backstory.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good to hear. Obviously knowing that you've gotten to this point in your life, just comparing it to what you've been through in the past and that sort of thing is inspiring. Yeah. Yeah. So how did you know what you wanted to do with your life, obviously before Christ and also after Christ?
Well, it was interesting because it was during the time that I was touring on the road that I came home for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And I had absolutely no idea what I'm doing in my life. None whatsoever, because all the dreams had gone. It was all just pretty blank and dark. So then I came home and I had a couple of weeks with my family, and my mother asked me if I would go to church with her, to which I immediately said no. That's what rock and rollers do. You don't go to church with your mum. But in the end, I just said, oh, look, I said to my dad, just shut her up. Let's just go. And so I went, and then I had an encounter with God in that place. It was not that the person that spoke said anything good or the music was really anything good, but I just suddenly, something happened inside me and something changed very significantly. And then I was still in the band for about another 12 months, and I had to go out then and learn to live in that arena and represent Christ in a very dark kind of place. But that was the key to me understanding what I wanted to do with my life. And it came about when I finally got the revelation of how much God had sacrificed for me, how much he loved me, and the extent to what Jesus went to save someone like me, who in my opinion didn't really warrant saving. Mm-hmm. And when I caught that, and I came to the realization that Jesus himself came to be a servant and to serve, that's when I kind of knew what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And Jesus said the greatest of all will be the servant of all, following him. So that's what I worked out, is that my life would be about serving and laying down my life for others. So, and that's my purpose.
I have a quick question. You say you represented Christ in such a dark area, and it just reminds me of something that I saw, and I saw that Jesus sat with sinners. He didn't sin with them, know the difference.
Yeah.
There's a big difference in sitting with sinners, and some of my friends, not all of them are Christians.
Yeah.
They sin. We sin every single day.
Everyone does.
But we are saved by Jesus, whereas because they don't have Jesus in their life, they just don't understand that. So for them, they're like, well, you sin, so why do you get that? And it's just sort of knowing that, well, I have Christ by my side.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm not going to sin with you, but I will sit with you. Because
Absolutely.
By sitting with them, maybe one day it will kind of bring Christ into their life, and he will show himself to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Through you.
When I first started walking out my faith, that's exactly what I had to do. Everybody was drinking, everyone was smoking, everyone was doing all the stuff that you do, and then God said, you gotta be in there and love them, but not partake.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what happens when you sit in a room and suddenly, I was the lead singer of the band at that point in time. It's my job to organise the parties, and now I don't drink, and now I'm not organising the girls and all that kind of stuff. So it suddenly was a real mystery to them what was going on. And then my heart kind of turned a little bit to the point where I got kind of a little bit angry with God. I said, why can't you get me out of this? Why are you keeping me in this horrible state? And he just went silent. And then one day I suddenly I can remember it was in Townsville, and I was looking out across a crowd of people, and it just suddenly hit me. These people aren't bad. These people aren't evil. They're broken. They're broken. They just don't know any different to what they're trapped in. And once I realized that was what it was about, then God said, I'll close the door now. And he closed the door. But he did say, which I'm still waiting to figure out, he said, one day I'll send you back to your people. I don't know what that means, other than possibly something to do with music in that space again. So, but that's a really cool thing you picked up there.
Yeah, that's really cool. Kev, do you think there's a definitive answer to like how you live your life, and I guess, or does it change over time?
Yeah, I think there is. I think there's a definitive answer, but I don't think it's necessarily what we think it is. You know, I think it's understanding who you are and understanding what a relationship with God looks like. And then how do you learn to love him, let him love you? And then how does that outwork? How does that outwork for you in representing him to other people? So I think that's the definitive thing that is the basis of what you need to get, regardless of what you do in regard to vocation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like God can use you anywhere you are, any vocation. Yeah, and the Bible says love people and love God and just make disciples that make disciples.
That's your core thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is your core thing.
Yeah. That's so good. What does the Bible say we should do with our lives?
I think people get really confused about this because I grew up was so confused, and because people were putting pressure on me, what are you going to do with your life? What are you going to do with your life? Well, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm just keeping it together. I think if you understand what God requires of us, it says in 1 Peter, and Peter was one of the original disciples, and his document he wrote down, he said, your job is to be holy as God is holy. So the first and foremost thing to do with our life is that we represent God. We have his character, we have his nature, we carry that holiness. Then the calling, which is found in Romans chapter 12, as Paul was writing to the church in Rome, he said, you've got to be conformed to the image of Christ. That's a work of God's Spirit upon the Scriptures transforming us. And then you go and make disciples. That, I think, is the key thing. I think that is the thing that God is most concerned about. That is the thing that he's going to hold us accountable for and reward us on. Yeah. I don't think it's tied to your vocation. And particularly for you guys growing up, like when I grew up, some of the people I know had their job their entire life. And then they got a gold watch at the end of it, but for you guys, you could have 10 different jobs. So your identity can't be tied up in that. It has to be tied up in your relationship with Christ, loving him with all your heart, then loving others. And that is where the key reward is. So I think that's the key thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. Again, obviously. Do you think your vocation is important? So I believe that you can really, God opens your doors for you. You can obviously, as long as you're outputting, like you're doing God's will and that sort of thing, you ask him for what he wants you to do in your life. If you follow that, it doesn't really matter what you do, which occupation you pick, as long as you're worshipping God.
Yeah.
Absolutely. With it. So do I think it's important? I don't think it's as important as we think it is, or as our parents think it is, or the world thinks it is.
Yeah.
I think it's more important who you're becoming. Are you representing Christ better? Are you living your life out? Are you making disciples? However, I will say this. I think it is important for you to figure it out, because if you pick a vocation that you don't enjoy, that you have to go to work 7 days a week and you are miserable, the chances of you fulfilling the first part of representing Christ, is slim. Mm-hmm. So I say, I think your vocation is important for you to pick something that you love, that you're passionate about, that you want to do, so that when you get up, you're not dragging yourself out of bed, but you want to go. And it's like someone once said, if you love what you do for work, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
So then it's much easier, because if you're happy about what you're doing and you're joyful about that, then it's easier for you to be holy as he is holy, and to be conformed to the image of Christ, and then share that with others.
Yeah.
If you end up in something that you're miserable in, you're not off the hook on it, but it's much harder for you to then create that joy if you're not happy. So it's important, I think, in you landing on what's right for you. But I don't think, as far as reward goes, I don't think God's really worried about your vocation. That's up to you, as long as you represent him well.
Yeah.
Yeah. One really last question, Kev, before we go through and wrap up the podcast. I've noticed, obviously, the shirt you're wearing, the Love This City shirt.
Yeah.
Are you able to elaborate on that sort of thing and what that's about?
Well, For the Gold Coast is kind of like tied to the charity arm of our church, which is Love This City. And so many people in the world feel like God's angry with them, feels like he doesn't love them and he's down on them or something like that. But the scriptures are really clear. It says, for God so loved the world that he gave.
Yeah.
So if God so loves the world and he's for them, we have a responsibility to be for them too. So the message that we want out from us as a church and out wide is not what God's against, but what God is for. And God is for human beings. He loves them. If he didn't love you, he wouldn't send Jesus to the cross for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's our message now through Love This City is like, God is for you, and you know what? We're for you too.
Yeah. God is for you, who can be against you?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Kev. I think we've got some great insight on, obviously, your past, your testimony, and how you've come to Christ, and just your wisdom is really inspiring. So hopefully, we've been able to apply that to our lives, and also our audience apply that to themselves as well. So
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
yeah, of course. So thanks for joining us today. We'd like to create a community with you guys. Just obviously, however you're watching today, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, really however you're tuning in, either if it's visual or just listening by audio. We'd love to hear, obviously, your input and your engagement. We'd just like to engage with you guys. If you're not already following us on Instagram, we post a lot of the behind the scenes stuff just to kind of see what it looks like making this podcast. We'd love for you to obviously just follow us and follow along with our journey doing this project, just at The Cross Discussion. We'd love to engage with you, so just let us know what you agreed with, what you liked, what questions you'd like answered in future episodes. Even drop a couple of the would you rathers that we'd like to kind of introduce with our guests and that sort of thing. But with that, let the discussion begin.